Richard Manuel, you won't believe what happened next. In the early 70 seconds, Bob Dylan showed up at Richard Manuel's door just to see if his friend was okay. The second he stepped inside, he froze. The place was wrecked. The dog hadn't been walked in who knows how long. And Richard, the aching, angel-voiced heart of the band, was drifting toward a cliff. If you've ever heard him sing and felt your chest go tight, you already know. This wasn't just any rock and roll cautionary tale. This was a soul singer in a roots rock body, a piano poet who could swing from gospel grit to glass-fragile falsetto in the same breath, and a man quietly losing the fight with his demons. Richard Manuel was born the 3rd of April 1943 in Stratford, Ontario. He learned harmony at church with his brothers, then, after dark, cracked open a whole other universe through a distant radio signal. Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, Ray Charles blues and soul that felt dangerous and alive. By his mid-teens, he was gigging, and before long came the invitation that changed everything. A slot with rock and roll taskmaster Ronnie Hawkins and his killer touring unit, the Hawks. Hawkins didn't recruit, he cherry-picked. Robbie Robertson on guitar, Levon Helm on drums, Rick Danko on bass, Garth Hudson on keys, and now Richard, the secret weapon at the piano. Discipline was non-negotiable under Ronnie Hawkins. Rehearse hard, play harder, leave the nonsense off stage. Richard had already formed a shaky friendship with the bottle, but when the lights hit, he never missed. Off stage, he was charming and quick. There's a story about a roadside burger stand in Ontario where Richard strolled up to Robbie Robertson. Someone cracked a joke about his big nose, and Richard just deadpanned, "That's why they call me Beak." Everyone laughed. Underneath the jokes, though, was a sensitive guy carrying more weight than anyone knew. By 1965, the folk world's crowned prince, Bob Dylan, wanted to go electric and needed a band that could take the heat. He hired the Hawks, Hugh Bedlam. The crowds booed, the purists raged, and tours became war zones with guitars. Levon Helm bailed mid-tour from the stress, but the rest held the line, turning chaos into muscle memory. Then, fate swerved. In 1966, Dylan crashed his motorcycle near Woodstock, New York, and retreated to recover. The guys followed to the quiet of the Catskills and shacked up in a house with pink siding, the now mythic Big Pink. What happened there feels like a scene out of a folktale. Musicians tucked away in the trees, wood stoves, cheap wine, long afternoons, and songs pouring out of a basement wall by wall. Richard Manuel wrote music to Dylan's lyrics for Tears of Rage, a haunting opener later cut for their debut, music from Big Pink. And when Richard sang Life is Brief, it sounded like someone telling you the truth you'd been avoiding. The album didn't explode right away. It just spread. The sound was old and new at once. Church harmonies, front porch stories, barroom rhythm, back road mystery. Against a late 60 seconds backdrop of paisley and psychedelic fireworks, these guys looked like time travelers and sounded like a century of American music in one room. Then came The Wait. And suddenly, the world paid attention. Success rolled in, but unity quietly loosened. Richard married a striking Toronto model, Jane Christiansen. And for a while, life looked golden: music, marriage, a home near Woodstock where friends drifted in and songs filled the rooms. Even George Harrison visited, stunned by the camaraderie and the craft. He later said he respected the band enormously. You can feel their fingerprints on his All Things Must Pass. Inside the group, though, credit and control started to scrape raw. When their self-titled second album landed in 1969, most songs were credited to Robbie Robertson. To Levon Helm, Rick Danko, Garth Hudson, and Richard Manuel, that didn't reflect how the music had actually been built out of hours of shared blood and sweat. The disagreements didn't explode in the press. They simmered in the studio and on the bus. For a sensitive spirit like Richard, it stung hard. He gradually wrote less. The bottle filled the empty space. By the early 70 seconds, the good times had curdled. Money and fame don't fix fractures, they widen them. Robbie Robertson later called that period the darkness. Richard knew he was sliding. He told friends he felt like he was holding the band back, but couldn't find the ladder out. That's when Bob Dylan climbed those steps and knocked on his door. What he saw wasn't just a messy room. It was a man sinking, neglecting himself, neglecting his dog, lost inside a fog of addiction. The unspoken rule in the band had always been not to meddle in each other's private lives. Now, it was impossible to look away. They kept going anyway, because that's what bands do. There were tours and sessions, but the spark flickered. In 1976, Robbie Robertson decided to call time with a grand farewell, The Last Waltz, filmed by Martin Scorsese. On stage that night, with legends dropping in and cameras rolling, Richard Manuel seemed far away. He missed a cue on the finale. If the show was meant to canonize the group's history, for Richard, it felt like being written out of his own story. After the waltz came the freefall. Richard holed up in a Malibu bungalow, refused to leave even when the utilities were cut, cooked steaks on an upside-down clothes iron, and left behind what looked like a graveyard of bottles. But somehow, he didn't vanish. The 80 seconds arrived. He married a Toronto woman, Arlie Litvak, cut back on drinking for stretches, and even reformed the band without Robbie Robertson. For a minute, hope cracked the door. Then the road told the truth. No more private jets or roaring arenas, just long drives, small stages, and spotty sound systems. The crowds were kind but smaller. The money, thinner. One night, Richard turned to Levon Helm and said, "Do you realize we've become these songs?" He didn't mean it as a compliment. The past was a set list, and they were stuck inside it. The 3rd of March 1986, a tiny club outside Orlando. After the gig, Richard Manuel thanked Garth Hudson quietly for 25 years of music. Later, he watched a movie with Levon Helm at the motel, traded a few soft jokes, and said he was heading back to his room for a minute. He woke Arlie Litvak to let him in, lay down beside her, and by morning, he was gone. Richard had died by suicide. He was 42. So, what do we do with a story like this? We remember the whole of him. The kid in Stratford mesmerized by a crackling radio. The joker nicknamed Beak. The basement alchemist at Big Pink. The friend who made Bob Dylan worry enough to knock. The man who tried, slipped, tried again, and finally couldn't carry it anymore. And we keep listening because the songs don't fix the past, but they keep it honest. If this hit you in the gut even a little, here's your nudge. Spin, music from Big Pink tonight, and really hear Tears of Rage. Let that opening line sit with you. Then tell me in the comments which Richard Manuel performance knocks you flat, Whispering Pines, The Shape I'm In. I want your picks. If you're into deep dive stories where the music matters and the people matter more, stick around. Like, subscribe. Share this with a friend who needs a reminder that behind every legendary band is a human voice trying to be heard. And take care of each other, always.